My name is Gianni Russo, a.k.a. Carlo, the infamous son-in-law from The Godfather. I'm now known as the Hollywood Godfather, and this is my story.
Before all of the wins in my portfolio, I was a little boy diagnosed with polio. Experimenting with cures, I tried every one. Felt everything in my right, but my left was numb. Walking with a limp, like will I ever run? Once again, or is this it? Am I forever done? Living in the hospital was never fun. Some people were cool, but not everyone.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for another Hollywood Godfather podcast. And this show this week is so important to me. And once we get into the subject matter, you're going to understand why. You know, as we go through life, we have a tendency of putting off things for tomorrow. And then it's tomorrow, it's the next day, it's the next month. I had a revelation this week through a newspaper story that was sent to me. In fact, I'm going to have Jeannie read it. And it's where they stopped the demolition of Marilyn Monroe's house. Do you have, let me introduce you first. Jeannie Raymond, my co-host, fortunately, and
my pleasure.
A major part of where we're going in the future with this show. So with no further ado, let her read this article, and then I'll shed light on where we're going and what we need you to participate in. Jeannie, if you would, please.
That's right. Well, what this is that I'm going to be telling you about here is our attention was brought to the fact that they are talking about demolishing Marilyn Monroe's house and on Helena Drive in LA. And it is such an icon and such a tribute to her life that people, you know, love to go by and see it. And it has been sold several times, but recently it was bought by an heiress who is wanting to demolish it to make her home a bigger place. And it has caused an uproar in the town because we have plenty of people thinking that it should be named a historical site and instead that house be preserved. So all of a sudden my mouse is going crazy here. I'm trying to get to the right article, but there's several different articles about it, but it is something that the city has stopped the demolition, and they are going to vote on it to see if they can make it a historical site instead. All right, so this article was in the New York Post, and it said the current owners of Marilyn Monroe's former Los Angeles home, a wealthy real estate heiress and her reality TV producer husband, are suing the city for the right to demolish Marilyn Monroe's home. And that was her home where she died. So it said the lawsuit was filed on Monday as an ongoing landmark designation process has stopped them from razing the iconic Brentwood residence, which they purchased for $8.35 million last summer. So the couple who live next door bought this home, and what they're trying to do is tear that down to expand their home. And in the process, they had put their permits in and had been granted permission to demolish the home. And then their plans were halted by city leaders who caught wind of the fact that they were trying to do that and brought the whole thing to a halt. And that is where it has turned into a big issue for these people because they're wanting to demolish the home, and many, many people are against it. And it sounds like the city is the number one people that's putting a stop to it. So the city council temporarily stopped the demolition of the late star's final home at a September hearing, arguing it should be designated a cultural monument landmark. And since the commission, the Cultural Heritage Commission, and the City Council Planning and Land Use Committee have greenlit its landmark application, according to the local news, which is really ticked off the couple because they think it's just a not bear, and they're filing lawsuits against the city. So the
Well,
application, go ahead.
no, here's where we're coming in, because unbeknownst to our audiences, a man called Mark Shaw, which is a great author, has written books, and why we're bringing it up tonight. In fact, if you haven't seen his book, this is Collateral Damage by Mark Shaw. Mark and I have been working for years for two things. One, in preserving the home, and the second, more important, is to have her death certificate reversed from suicide to homicide. There's no reason in the world her legacy should be destroyed by saying that she committed suicide. Where she was in her life, and it's important that he documented it. And the reason that's important now is, as I mentioned opening the show, we have a tendency to putting off things. Well, me personally, I've been involved with this. In fact, I'll show you a photo, which is quite legendary now also. That is, if you could see this, this is a picture from Cal Neva Hotel.
Oh, wow.
And this is the last weekend of July in 1962. That's the last weekend Marilyn was alive. August, I think, 4th, she was killed.
In 1962, at 36 years old.
No, at 62 years old.
No, in 1962. And she
Oh,
was,
yeah. Oh, she
was 36,
yeah.
and that is incredible. So young. And I don't think there's a person out there anymore that believes she killed herself. You know, it is so sad. And like you said, it's a kind of a stain on her legacy to think that she did that. And I think they've pretty much proven that that is not a true story. And so I like the idea.
The problem that we're having is the resistance from the federal government. And just like they're doing with the Warren report, which, a year later, Kennedy was assassinated, and we still can't get the facts on that. And fortunately, working with Mark Shaw and his investigative skills and the books he's written, we now have facts where first it was a denial by Robert F. Kennedy, who was the Attorney General at the time, that he was even in the state. That's how naive he is. There's no way an Attorney General could be in a state and there's not records for the police department and everybody else to know he's present. And Mark went further and found out and got the records of the helicopter landing, because Peter Lawford and him landed at 20th Century Fox by helicopter. So all this stuff is documented that he was there. And us looking into it further, we proved that not only was there in California, he was in her house for 6 hours prior to calling the ENT. So even the date that she died is in discrepancy at this point, because she actually died August 4th, but they didn't call the ENT till after midnight the next day. So the death certificate is saying August 5th that she committed suicide. Now, if someone's committing suicide and she has an audience, why didn't you stop her?
Exactly.
I mean, it's so crazy. And the reason I'm speaking on behalf of Mark Shaw, which again lends to my opening statement, sometimes we procrastinate and put things off. Mark and myself are the only living people right now who are a part of this whole thing. And we're trying, as I said earlier, we've been working on it for years, and now we're calling on our audience and our fans and viewers and anybody out there that loves Marilyn Monroe.
That's
We
exactly right.
Yeah, we
There's
need.
so many fan clubs and young kids now. Marilyn Monroe died before I was born. And so, but she is such an icon. I have a daughter who's 28 years old and she's a big Marilyn Monroe fan. And so, I mean, her legacy lives on, and I'm sure it's a call to order for anyone who's a Marilyn Monroe fan to join in and do this last little thing and try and get that changed to the correct thing on her death certificate.
So you're talking yourself into a great job right now, because, and you, unbeknownst, you are a genie. And
That's right, Jean. I was born Jean, just
I
like
know.
Norma Jean. Yes.
And she was Norma Jean, her real name. So what we're trying to do, and hopefully you will make a success, our listeners and viewers, we're going to create a petition starting tonight. And Jeannie's going to tell you where you should start sending the names. You collect them. And the petition that we're trying to do first, we've already stopped the house. And I think that's going to be easily done, because we're approaching the heiress who bought the house with her reality husband. I know the guy's name well. I don't want to use it, nor her name, and publicize it. But we're making them an offer, basically, that they shouldn't refuse, to use a cliche from an old movie. But we're willing, for the money they were going to spend to tear down the house, to contribute that money along with money we raise to move the house to a land in Burbank. And why we're saying Burbank, Burbank has two significant reasons in Marilyn's life. And the parallels that Marilyn and I had as youngsters, me being 12, and when she was 12, even though we had a major difference in age. At 12, she was put into an orphanage around Burbank Studios. And when she looked out the window, she said, someday I'm going to be a movie star at Burbank Studios. That's the only studio she realized. And she was reading all used movie star magazines at the time. And now understand, she's 12. And I was 12. I was in Bellevue Hospital in a situation, and I finally got the window bed, and I looked out and I saw the Empire State Building. And I said, someday I'll be uptown. Well, we both achieved our goals. I'm uptown right now talking to you in New York. But I just think, to make it very short and simple, the petition should read, the change of Marilyn's death certificate from suicide to homicide. Make it very simple. One or two sentences, that's it. From suicide to homicide. And get the names, go door to door if you have to. Or we already know there's so many, fan clubs, people who do support her. And I'm sure as we do our research, we're even going to get more. Have you found any yet so far that you've done, Judy?
Well, I've scanned through Instagram and Facebook, and I am definitely going to reach out to each one of those groups and ask them if they want to sign this petition. So I will definitely be shooting a little message to each one of those fan clubs, and just on everybody. If you're a Marilyn Monroe fan, pass that along to your friends. It's just kind of a group thing that could make a difference, and we'd love to see that change for her. And anybody that's a fan of hers, I don't think there's a fan out there that believes that is what happened to her, that she killed herself.
Well, we could prove it didn't, because, I was very close to her the last 5 years of her life. And the picture I showed you earlier, I was present at Cal Neva. And even all the people at Cal Neva have now gone. Sinatra's dead. Buddy Greco's dead. I mean, Sam Giancana is dead. And Sam Giancana was the orchestrator of all of us being there. Why we were there was Frank Sinatra was going to ask Marilyn to do one more favor for the mob, let's say, and associated friends, because JFK was put in office by Joe Kennedy, the father, going to Frank Costello and asking for their support through the unions, like the Culinary Union, the Teamsters Union, International Longshoremen's Union, because they realized they couldn't get a Catholic in the White House without the support of the normal voters. And obviously we got him in. The reward to the mob, as Joe Kennedy said, if my son is voted president, one of his first duties, they would invade Cuba, and they used the excuse that there were missiles on the island, and that's the closest proximity to the United States. And that was, the mission was called the Bay of Pigs, and we were supposed to go in and invade them. One of the reasons that we know for facts, and it's in Collateral Damage and other writings that Mark Shaw has written about, and has documentation, even from Joe DiMaggio's mother, who was a good friend of Marilyn Monroe's, and knowing in the mindset of when they said she was supposed to commit suicide, she never would do it, because her and Joe had plans of getting back together. And with that said, they were going to get married, have a child, and live happily ever after. She was here in New York City with us for a guest of Frank Costello at the Waldorf Astoria, and that's how I had the pleasure of meeting her and becoming friends with her. And at that time, she was studying with Lee Strasberg to become a through thespian, because the Xanax at Fox, who she was under contract to, Fox Movie Studios, they were exploiting her as a sex symbol only, and that's not what she wanted to be. She was just commissioned to do a Broadway play as a legitimate actress. So if you look at what was going on in her life, she was going back to Joe DiMaggio, one of her true loves, and now she had the rights to go to claim her fame as a legitimate movie star in a legitimate play. There is no reason in the world, and I talk to her almost on a daily basis, because we had an empathy for each other because of our association and how our lives crossed, even though they were 16 years apart. But with that said, again, and I was there, and that night, I was there for 3 days already, and Sam Giancana controlled the cameras. They had Marilyn Monroe's room set up, and what they were trying to do, and something this audience doesn't know, unless they heard it from me before, Marilyn was now involved with Robert Kennedy, because John, the brother, said, listen, I can't be bothered with you right now or associated with you, because I'm a Catholic and I'm married to Jackie Kennedy. So give me 2 years in the White House and I will leave her and marry you. That's how naive Marilyn was. And with this, Bobby Kennedy took advantage of her and became friends with her. And what I'm about to say to you, you may have heard it once before or twice before, but we heard it loud and clear at that pool at Cal Neva that day, when Frank, during twilight hours, we were having cocktails, and he whispered in her ear what they would like her to do. And what they wanted her to do was to bed Robert Kennedy one more time. They had her room all set up with cameras, and then they could blackmail him to stop his antics of going after the mob the way he was. And unbeknownst to the world, they did this years prior to J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, because they found out he was a cross-dresser. They threw a party for him in Chicago, And they had all the photographs of the head of the FBI dressed in drag. And that's why he always denounced that there's not even a mob. And that was, Costello, my guy, had him under control. And this is what they were trying to do. But Marilyn went crazy, hysterically crazy, because for the first time we all heard it, is that she was having an affair with Bobby. She was pregnant, and Bobby forced her to have an abortion because he and Ethel already had, I think, 5 kids or whatever it was. And she went crazy and said, I'm going to press. I had it with these Catholics, these Kennedy boys. I'm going to go public. And once I heard that, the next day I was on a plane back to New York and reported to Frank Costello. And he said that day, Monday morning, they're going to kill her. And sure enough, Thursday, she was dead. And, the more we procrastinate, right now, fortunately, Mark Shore wrote books. It's documented. He has statements. He has statements from the FBI. We have documentation of them landing at 20th Century Fox Heliport. So, and now we all know that they're there. They were in the studio. The ENT ambulance driver made a statement that he saw them in the house. So with that said, we have a big opportunity now before we lose it all, because when I go through a list after this commercial break of who has passed, you're not going to believe what the list is about. So let's take a break a minute. We'll come back, and I'm going to give you some jaw-dropping statements of names that are involved in this. We'll be right back. And we know where you live, and we'll come find you.
Vinny from South Philly here. I'm going to tell you, I had one of the best Sunday dinners in a long time. I'm going to tell you why. Right here. Corleone, fine Italian, brother. This stuff is the real deal. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everybody knows me out there. They know. I make my own sauce. I make my own gravy. I make my own pasta. I don't buy this stuff in the store. However, I made an exception. Why? Because my friend Johnny Russo out there, I know what he's capable of doing. I know what he's about. He's about quality. So I said, I got to take a shot. And I'm glad I did. Because, see, I've had dinner all over the world, but this product brings me back to Italy. We got the olive oil, and I've lived in Italy, okay? I lived in Calabria. I've went to Sicily. I've been in Messina. I've been to Palermo. I've been everywhere. And this oil reminds me of an old Italian couple that my father used to buy olive oil from. They used to live in the mountains, and they used to make their oil pure from their own olive grove. This is it. It brings me right back to that. And you don't need a lot. You put a little on your salad, you marinate. Come on. You can figure it out. This is the real stuff. I also got their arrabbiata, okay? Again, I don't buy this stuff, but I made an exception. I'm glad I did. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to try this stuff. You won't be sorry, okay? Give it a shot. You go to Corleone, Fine Italian. You order it. It comes to the door. And then all you got to do is put it together. And I'm sure you can look it up. And if you don't know how to cook it, you ask me. And I'll be over for dinner. Enjoy. Salud.
All right, so we're back. Now, what's going on, and it just was released, and I sent Jeannie a picture. She's going to post it up. A man that I was very close to for a long time was Don Rickles. And how I got close to Don is when he made a friendship with Frank Sinatra. And Frank was my only singing teacher. Frank said, you're ready to go out. And he called Steve Wynn, who owned the Golden Nugget Hotel. And I became the opening act to Don Rickles' show. I did a half hour. And why I'm letting this out now, I never spoke about it, because, like in any business, you got to get comfortable on stage. And we got real comfortable together, and we've been friends forever. And unbeknownst to me, just before Don Rickles died, he made a statement, and it came out today. And I think I sent you the photograph,
I
Jeannie,
think,
today, with Don
yes.
Rickles making the statement that he had an argument with Frank Sinatra one night where Frank was feeling melancholy. And he broke down in tears, which Sinatra's done so many times with me also. You know, he's a very emotional bipolar guy. Nobody knew that. Where he said he had something to do with Marilyn's death. No, I don't know. I didn't never do that. He spoke about this, but now this became record because it's been announced today or yesterday that Don Rickles said this.
Wow.
Now, when you start to think about it, when I left Calneva, there was only three people alive. Marilyn, obviously, Sam Giancana, and Sinatra. Now, if Sinatra's saying he had something to do with her now I don't know whether he drove her where they told her to go with her. I don't know any of that. It's all up in the air. But the fact that we're getting more support of saying this was the days before, we're talking about 72 hours. I mean, here we are now. She died in 62. We're 62 years later. How ironic is that? And no one, because they keep like that, like I mentioned earlier with JFK, the Warren report, another president will come in and they'll decide not to disclose the report.
Oh, yeah.
What we know what's in that report is so devastating that if the voting public, the citizens of the United States, read it, and I'm going to give them the facts right now, what's in it, we know. And again, it's in some of Mark's findings also, Mark Shaw, that Bobby Kennedy was responsible for calling off the Bay of Pigs. And he hated his brother for what he represented and all his friends in the mob. And he hated his father. Nobody knew that until he got into office. And with that, he was going after everybody that put his brother into office immediately. And everybody was up in arms, calling Joe and calling Costello to get to this guy. And how could he make his brother attorney general? He's coming after us.
Right.
Well,
After they got him there, right? After they got him into the office.
And Bobby Kennedy convinced his brother to call off the airstrike for the Bay of Pigs. Now, what's more embarrassing to the United States government, and this is all facts, 2,900 troops, our troops on the ground, didn't get the air support, and they were all annihilated. They were all killed in a massive slaughter by Fidel Castro's troops on the ground. I mean, what an embarrassment and an ego trip for Bobby Evans. I'm Bob, listen, that's a Freudian Bobby Evans. But Bobby Kennedy, he created all of this. So, I mean, again, this is why we need, why I'm saying petitions, we've seen it before. Mass petitions represent mass voting power. Mass voting power influences the people that are in office, that these people are up in arms, they want answers. It just can't be a committee of small people. They'll say, well, they'll get tired and go away, like most people have. The Warren Commission is still not made public to us. And, here we are 61 years later, and we still don't know what happened. Right. I have a great idea what happened. I know some of the shooters that were on job, but it's what I'm saying is the urgency now has never been more prevalent than it is now. It's time for us that there's a few of us still willing to go to battle. I'm willing to finance it even. And I'm doing that on the quiet right now to get this lady to calm down, pull the lawsuit. They're not going to win the lawsuit. We've already got to push to September. That gives us plenty of time to do what we're doing. And what my goal is to get Warner Brothers Studio involved and Burbank, the city, to donate us a piece of property to put the house on it. And it'll become a money-making monument for them with tours. And it will establish Marilyn the way she should be established, as a thespian, as a dream, as the actress that she could have been. And she already made so many great movies. And that's what the petition's about. And I think of anybody, even like you said, your daughter was a new fan of a person she never met, but she's attracted so many people. And if you start to look into her childhood and her legacy, and I know for a fact, so many important men like Marlon Brando and Tony Curtis, Frank Sinatra, and on and on and on. They all took advantage of this girl. And I've had numerous conversations because most of the people I mentioned, I did movies with.
Right.
And there's a whole, I mean, it's almost barbaric. There's a Marilyn club that if you've been with her sexually, you know that she had a scar where her left leg meets her groin area. Now, you would have to be very intimate to know that scar.
Right.
So with that said, and, you know, I've had arguments with Tony Curtis and all of them. I mean, why don't you throw a blanket over and tell her to put her clothes back on? Because
oh no, they weren't going to do that.
Oh no, and but you know it's the funniest thing. It's a situation where, and people may say the same thing with me, but you know our being friends turned into we both needed hugs, and then the hugs with drinks turned into something different. And
long hugs. It's a long
but
hug.
fortunately, I have to say, I know, and I don't feel guilty about it at all because we both needed hugs, even our age difference. But, you know, it was a thing that, you know, we understood each other. The things that she liked were the simplest things in the world. Taking a walk over the Brooklyn Bridge at night. We used to go to Gino's, a restaurant on Lexington Avenue. She'd wear a disguise because she couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
But we'd go there on Sunday night. She'd have a dark wig on. We'd have a table in the corner. And we're eyeing some of her friends that would go there. Sinatra would go there.
And not recognize her.
Not recognize her. And then around the corner was the Subway bar, which was a normal bar, but she didn't want to go back to the Waldorf, which was a few blocks down. And I'd walk her down there, you know, but she just wanted to be a regular person. I have photographs. I have an album of her nobody has. I have photographs of her in a disguise, but you could see it's her face, buying hot dogs going into Central Park. She just wanted to be a normal person. But because of stardom, she couldn't. And then everybody took advantage of it. And she was just about to, you know, become the person she wanted to be. And the good news is that, as I said, Mark Shaw, who unfortunately why he's not with us tonight, he's under the weather. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I got to motivate this. I can't wait for him to be feeling better. I don't want to pry into his privacy, but that's why when I spoke to you about it, I think this is such a necessity. And you have all the whales and all the things they need to do as far as an email and stuff you're going to give them.
Yeah, we'll get that petition set up and you guys will be able to get on and sign that petition, send it to your friends, share it. If you share the podcast, we'll have it it's in the show notes. So it'll tell you exactly how to get there and spread the word, you know, let people know. Mark Shaw has worked for years to get all this stuff brought out. And there's his book. Again, Gianni, what's the name of the book?
Collateral Damage.
Collateral Damage.
And what, but let's clarify that too. Collateral Damage is another story that I'm involved indirectly with for another murder with Dorothy Kilgallen. And Dorothy Kilgallen doesn't have the fame that Marilyn has and the legacy that Marilyn has yet. Not that we shouldn't rectify her death, but I think she'll become a residual of it all, and her death will be rectified too. We both know, Mark and I, it was the same assassin. And which is crazier, Dorothy Kilgallen, I befriended because she was a columnist in New York City. She was one of the on the panel of What's My Line every Sunday night. And
She was a
she was a
spitfire,
major
wasn't
person.
she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
she didn't take any crap.
but not only that, she went to Texas and interviewed people that were involved with the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald. So she was about to come out with a book. And another strange piece, as my life has always been so strange, early on, when I had to go to a continuation school, because I was only 15 and a half, they made me go. I went to Wilford Academy, and I wasn't there but a month or two. And Mark Sinclair, who was the head colorist for Clairol at the time, and Kenneth were working at Lily Daché, who was the head haberdasher, who had the best salon in New York on 56th and Park. Well, they hired me as a shampoo boy. Now, if they didn't hire me, I would have never washed Marilyn Monroe's hair. The ironic, sick thing about this whole chain of events, Mark Sinclair found Dorothy Kilgallen's body in her apartment because he had a key. Every morning, he'd go there at a certain time to do in hair and makeup before she went on air. But he found her with a suicide note and drugs, which she wasn't taking either. It was the same setup as Marilyn. So, I mean, the parallels
Yeah,
and the storylines, I mean, it's like a Hitchcock movie.
right. Like everybody's gonna just do it exactly the same. They didn't even didn't even take time to come up with an original story. I think Dorothy Kilgallen, anything I've heard of her, she was way too sassy. She'd have never killed herself.
Oh my God, no. And like you say, she was on top of her game.
Mhm.
I used to see her all the time at the Copacabana because she was out every night with Walter Winchell, all the columnists. That was their watering hole. And Costello told management they never get a check because the next day they're writing about everything that was going on in the Copacabana. It was the best publicity in the world.
Right, making it the hot spot.
And
Yeah,
it was.
she was a
So with all of
spitfire.
that, I hope we've touched a sensitivity in all of your minds, anybody that's listening to the show. And we're going to give you monthly reports on how we're doing and even on the cases and the progress of relocating our house, because we know we're going to get it done. There's no, that I'm not even worried about, because if the lady want to, she's involved already, and without giving up her name, she doesn't need money. And why not become part of a legacy that you're preserving?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we could convince her. I have people now meeting with her. I have the lawyer, without giving his name, who sold her the house.
Oh, wow.
And he's going to go, his first name is Frank. I don't want to give his last name, but he's now become an advocate. And so I think it'll be an ongoing story. And I'm happy that you and I are going to be spearheading it. And we hope Mark gets a speedy recovery. Joins.
Right.
But meanwhile, read his book, Collateral Damage. Plus,
Right.
you're going to give them the listing of the shows that we pre-recorded already And at their leisure, maybe you should just post them at the end or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
That
can do
would-
that. I'll post them all on there. That way they'll just be able to click on the
And they
links.
can reference it and go to
Yes.
each one, and you're
It'll
going to
click on it,
hear
take you right to it.
and his testimony and his investigation is going to clarify everything we just talked about. And the people that I didn't even get to mention, like the Don Rickles and the Sinatras and the people that have been involved with Marilyn are all gone. There's nobody. Right. It's up to Jeannie and I now, and Mark.
And Mark Shaw. Mark Shaw has worked his tail off, excuse me, so much in his life, has followed this and fought so hard to uncover, and he's brought to light so much. You know, he has fought so hard for this. So I think this would be a great tribute to Marilyn, and also be great to help Mark Shaw prove his point and finally get that taken care of once and for all. I think it's a great thing. I'm really excited for it. I hope all of you listeners will tell a friend, get as many people as possible. We'll get that petition out there, see what we can move a mountain with all of your help. So please spread the word, and we'll get that moving.
And the buzzword for us, all of us who's getting involved, suicide to homicide.
That's right.
And with that said, good night. Thank you. We want these cards and letters coming in real fast. This is
That's
time.
exactly right. Hey, I've got a great idea. Everybody use that in the comments. Rate the shows and put suicide to homicide. Put those in the show notes and see how many people we can get that are going to help us get this going. So just put that in the comments. Even just put Marilyn Monroe or, you know, anything.
But suicide to homicide should be the
That's
buzzword.
great. Hashtag suicide to homicide. Let's get that going.
All right. Good night, all. We'll see you next week. We got some great guests coming on, and keep your cards and letters coming. We love you.
That's right. Have a great night.
But I'll be back.
No regrets, no complaints. Lived a life with no restraints. The little kid they all counted out, proved them all wrong, that's without a doubt. Laying there with my left side numb, 5-year bout with polio, but yes, I won. From standing on corners like how many pens you want, to living in a bakery, then opening my own restaurant. Of course, I had some help along the way, friends like Frank Costello that I miss each and every day. Things from many years ago still resonate.